it was pretty common for a backcountry hunter to train in the summer and then hunt and then get out of shape all winter. We see archers all the time, their shoulders hurt. They do crossover symmetry type movements like 3 days a week. It takes like 8 minutes and they feel like 100%. So some of it is really simple.
What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic here. Quick update. It is crunch time. Possibly more literally than figuratively. We're going to get there. I have Mr. Dustin Diefenderfer from the MTNTOUGH Fitness Lab based out of the great state of Montana, Bozeman, Montana to be exact. Dustin, we're going to talk about fitness today, related things to fitness, people's fitness journey, kind of that, like I mentioned in the open there, that crunch time. Like maybe you haven't been getting after it as much as you want, but you do want to hit the hills as hard as you can. And what can you do to make that happen and perform optimally in the field? Welcome, man. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, man. Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
What? Give me a brief, a quick hitter background on your personal background, your personal fitness background. The origin story of MTNTOUGH and kind of like your guys' ethos and philosophy there.
For sure. Yeah, I can't really keep it a short story. I'll keep it as short as I can because the founding story of MTNTOUGH has been a long journey, and we're on our 8th year of business now. So we've evolved as a company over those 8 years in a lot of really cool ways. But the way the whole thing started was in 2016, I founded MTNTOUGH. And in 2016, I had just got home from working in Africa. My wife and I were doing missionary work in Uganda. And what was the kind of the light bulb moment were a lot of factors that created MTNTOUGH. And I'll cover those factors briefly. But I am a Montana kid, lifelong backcountry archery elk hunter, and was born and raised out here. My dad was passionate about archery, and then I have a lot of uncles, and so we spent a tremendous amount of time in my youth chasing elk in September, all throughout the Rocky Mountain West. And then as I got older into that kind of college age range, I really focused in the gym on getting better for the backcountry. So I did go through this season of being a gym rat, but I was fortunate that kind of crew that I started doing that with in Bozeman, they were all wildland firefighters. So they were gym rats also, but they were also thinking about how can I be better in the backcountry this upcoming fire season. I wanted to use the gym to become better this upcoming elk season. And so that was kind of building. And then I met my wife, and my wife was a passionate runner. And so that created this combo of my kind of gym training. And then with her, we got really into marathons. And then that led to 50Ks in ultra marathons in the Rocky Mountain West. And at first it was the perfect combination. It was, the gym and then the running, but the running in these ultras in the Rocky Mountain West, you're running in the same mountain range, a lot of times the same hunting area that you're going to be able to bow hunt later that year. And so it was creating this really solid foundation for MTNTOUGH without me even knowing it. And the big kind of light bulb moment did happen when I went really heavy on the running side. So we ended up running a marathon a month for a year.
Oh my gosh.
I do have a weakness of going over the top. And so like once I find something, I go all in on it. And we just went all in on this running and ultra running thing. And it turned out that year that we did that turned out to be one of the most brutal packouts of my life. So we were running all the time, all the way up into September. I had a great hunt. I was kind of lean and mean in the mountains that year. You can kind of fly around with that kind of training. But when it came time for the pack out, and that was just happened to be a pretty brutal one, it was very obvious to me that too much cardio is not the answer. And really what that told me, which was really exciting, was that there should be a mission specific way to train for a backcountry hunter, like a true do it yourself, deep in the backcountry hunter that's going to have some heavy pack outs should train in a very mission specific manner. And I kind of knew that from some of my background, that like the military is going to train on critical skills. The NFL is going to train on critical skills. And like the NFL, if they have an offensive lineman, he has a certain job he has to do that he needs to train towards. And they're going to train him very differently than the wide receiver, because there's different skills involved to be successful. And a backcountry hunter is a really unique athlete. They're unique. Almost, you can't really compare them to anyone else in professional sport or the military, for a couple reasons. The military is the closest athlete, but with backcountry hunting, you have high elevation, rugged terrain, but two things really separate them from a training perspective. One is hunts are multiple day events, usually 3, 5, 7, 10 days. And there's no other athlete in the world that you're training for a 3, 5, 7, or 10-day event. So that makes them very unique. Secondly, their hardest day is going to be on the tail end of that trip usually. So if you're successful on day 5, the mountain has already beat you up for 5 days, and now you have to do the most amount of work. So that makes a backcountry hunter different than anyone else. And then lastly, it's the demands of a heavy pack. So the military gets close to this, but the military is not pushing the 80, 90, 100-pound packs like a hunter is. And so all of these kind of factors started brewing, the gym background and the hunting background and the running background. And then just knowing that no one in 2016, no one was looking at the backcountry hunter and saying, how could I create a mission specific training step-by-step plan for this person? And we had just got home from Africa, and I was stuck in Bozeman without a plan B. And it was kind of like, now's the time to launch this thing.
No, man, that's perfect. And I think that's a huge point. It really is such a, the physical demands are so different from, most sports or activities, like you said, being a multiple days. Your diet might be changing. I mean, there's so many things woven into that hunt. And like you said, you're coming off the mountain, hopefully successful. That could be like your hardest day. Like you're already probably depleted in a lot of ways. Yeah, it's tough, man. I've done a handful of backcountry hunts, and they're definitely some of the more challenging things I've done in my life.
Yeah, the demands are crazy. You got the altitude is a whole nother factor. And then you got the weather. So you have altitude, high elevation, rugged terrain. Nothing is even, nothing is flat. You're getting limited amounts of sleep. You're not sleeping great on a sleeping pad. And then you're usually in a calorie deficit in the backcountry as well. So eating as many calories as you can pack lightly helps, but you have all these factors against you. And so going into that situation as prepared as possible is really key. We talk about it at Mountain Tough all the time, that the backcountry is always going to be hard. Like it's always going to kick your butt in some ways, but we want our customers to thrive in the backcountry, not just survive.
Oh yeah. I mean, the mountains, their level of indifference to you is they just don't care. Like they're not going to change for you. I mean, you have to change. You have to change for them. That's for sure.
For sure.
What is so what would you say like is the overarching, philosophy or ethos of Mountain Tough then?
So our philosophy when we started after that founding story, and we launched Mountain Tough in the park behind my house. So it started really bootstrap. it was like, hey, I'm looking for some backcountry hunters to train. But a lot of those founding principles are still the principles that we focus on today. And our our number one ethos is that we are going to help our customers become more mentally tough. Because what we found in all of our research and all of our training and all of our testing was really what's separating consistent backcountry hunters from inconsistent backcountry hunters is their mindset. It is their ability to overcome adversity. And so in that first year, we hired a Navy SEAL and a Lieutenant Colonel Army Ranger. And the reason that we did that right out of the gates in 2016 was not only did we want to have the step-by-step backcountry hunting human performance physical plan, but we also wanted to help mountain toughers become more mentally tough every step of the way. And so the mind often trumps the physical. The mental will often trump the physical when it comes to a successful backcountry hunt. And you see that over and over again with guys that are like harvesting elk for 10, 20 years in the backcountry on public land. They're not always more physically capable than others, but they always have this mindset that allows them to stay out there longer and push further. So that is certainly one of our founding ethos and principles. Our second one with Mountain Tough that's been around since the beginning is this concept of being always ready. So we have shirts that say always ready. We have stickers that say always ready. And what always ready means is that we want our client base, our customers that are doing Mountain Tough training, we want them to be at this 80% level throughout 12 months of the year. And so if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, essentially. So if you're at 80%, then if your wife asks you, hey, do you want to run a Spartan next month with me? You don't have to train up for that. You're already ready. Or if your daughter or son says, hey, will you run the school 10K with me? You're there, you're ready. You don't have to train up for that event. And then that last 20% from 80 to 100, we can tweak that dial, and that's where that real mission specific training is going to come in. Because, not all hunts are the same. Not all expeditions are the same. And so we try to get all our customers to live this always ready lifestyle so that they're ready for whatever life throws at them. And that could be a home intruder coming into your house, or that could be your friend calling in September looking for some help for a pack out. You're ready to say yes to that. You don't have to train for that. And so balancing that with the mindset, it is really our two founding ethos and principles. And then after that, it's all related to focusing on the 6 pillars of fitness, which is going to be your endurance, your stamina, your muscular endurance, your strength, your stability, your mobility.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge one. In that it's like, getting fit or more fit or being ready for the mountains might be your North Star, but obviously it translates into and overflows into every aspect of your life, and enhancing and making that better. And if you're always ready, I guess, yeah, like you said, you're always ready, and you don't have to get ready. I think getting ready is, that's one of the hardest things. Starting can be the hardest thing. And I think, that's what, we're going to get and talk about this in a minute here. But, I think the bulk of a lot of our conversation is starting, the mental toughness and discipline to start and get ready for the mountains this fall, but then start that always ready journey to keep it going.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when we started that principle and that ethos of being always ready, things have changed in the industry in the last 6, 7, 8 years. And in some really, really good ways. So physical fitness is spoken about more now. It's talked about more. It's more applied and accepted than it was 8 years ago. Eight years ago, it was pretty common for a backcountry hunter to train in the summer and then hunt and then get out of shape all winter. And so that's still, you still see that happening. It's happening less than it was, which is a really, really good sign. Like a hunter athlete is more of a thing now, and a mountain athlete is more of a thing now than it was then. But you're still seeing some of those characteristics, and we call that kind of a roller coaster of training throughout the year. And that roller coaster is so dangerous, and it's leading to so many negative effects. And so if someone is getting ready for backcountry hunting this fall, they need to start training now. And now is always going to be a little too late, because the real answer is you should be training consistently throughout the year. Mm-hmm. And then just take your training style through different blocks. But that analogy of that Western hunter that is going to train in the summer and then hunt in the fall and then take all winter off and get out of shape and then rebuild, they have to go through that starting process that you're talking about that is so hard to do. They have to go through that over and over and over again, year after year after year. And that start is so much more difficult when you're out of shape than if you're in shape. And everything hurts, everything's sore. Mentally, you just don't want to do it. But what we really see also is that is where a lot of these injuries come in as well. So letting yourself get out of shape and then back into shape really is a significant increase in injury risk. And so I think a big part of, I think the question is, how do you start? When do you start? How do you make this a daily practice? What we talk about all the time at Mountain Tough is being physical every day. Whether you're doing a Mountain Tough program or any other program, it really doesn't matter what it is from that habit formation. It's, you can ruck, you can walk, you can swim, you can bike. I think the key to connecting it to your mental toughness and making it a lifelong habit so that you're healthy for decades, not just for this season, is that philosophy of doing something hard every day, doing something physical every day.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. I mean, once you get it going, it is so much easier to keep it going. At least that's what I find. Up until about last spring, I was like, I'd gotten back into working out on a really consistent basis. And I was bear hunting actually, and had a heavy pack on, ate it, fell forward, and kind of like jacked up my left shoulder. But I also allowed that to be like my excuse to not work out when like my legs were working perfectly fine. Yep. So like, but it was just like, I'm like, I can't do all the things I want to do. I'm going to wait till this heals, then wait. And now it's just like, oh man, that's, now you're back to square one.
Yeah. You see that a lot where you see the flip side working much. You see the kind of a night and day difference between the flip side of like someone who tears their ACL, which is a common injury kind of in this Bozeman area. And we see a lot of those test athletes come through the lab that might have tore their ACL skiing or skateboarding with their kid. And the athletes that take time off to allow that ACL to heal versus the athletes that say like, hey, I can't use my right knee, but I can still train my upper body and I can still do a lot of stuff without using that right knee. The muscle mind connection is astonishing on how fast those people will recover and bounce back. And a big part of that is they're just maintaining that discipline, maintaining that daily habit.
What can a person do? And maybe the answer is you just have to do it. Kind of start to build that discipline. Like what what, like, is that like setting realistic goals and achieving those goals, or like, what are some good ways for a person to do that so they can get into that routine and build on it?
Yeah, I think that we're lucky with hunters, and talking about hunters helps a lot with that question, because a huge part of training discipline and mental discipline is what you'll hear talked about all the time is you have to have your why. And having your why is a difficult question when you just throw that out to the general public. So if you tell the general public, like, hey, you have to have your why for all these other factors to come in, for a lot of people, identifying that big why is difficult. Eventually they'll identify their why as like, I want to be there to hike and hunt with my kids when they're 18 to 24. And so I need to stay in shape and be ready for that. But until they get to that big overarching why, the why and the urgency around hunting season is incredibly helpful. So hunting season, especially anyone listening that has a Western backcountry trip plan, getting your discipline, your training starting, that trip is your why. Like, you don't want to fail on that trip. You don't want to eat a lifetime tag. You don't want to get on a Colorado elk hunt that you've been dreaming of for 10 years and then be too sore on day 2 to get out of your tent. Like, these are all things that we see all the time, where a lot of people can't take full advantage on a hunt of a lifetime because they didn't put in the preparation, which is a really cool why for hunters. Like, that is your why. Like, get as physically and mentally prepared as possible before this fall. And that why has a deadline and urgency around it, which others don't, which is a huge blessing. Like knowing that your hunt is in September or October or November, that is your deadline that you can reverse engineer and work backwards from. So I think use that as your fuel would be what I recommend for hunters that have big trips this fall. For those that don't, you got to find that why, whether it's your family or your kids, and use that for your fuel to be the best version of yourself. But what we did in 2017 and 18 at Mountain Tough in our lab. So in Bozeman, we have a test lab. So we have mountain athletes in here every day testing a variety of programming so that we know what works and what doesn't work on the mountain. And what we found in that earlier research was that these cardio and muscular adaptations that are going to help you be a better hunter this fall, they take at a bare minimum 12 weeks. So any amount of training is better than no training. So training 30 days out from a hunt is going to knock some rust off the system. But for real substantial cardio and muscular adaptations, you need a 12-week minimum. So if you're hunting in September, you need to be training in June. Again, it's better to be training all year round and then dialing it up, but you don't want to wait. You want to start, because all of these things take time. So like VO2 max, stroke volume, lung capacity, muscular endurance. Think about all of that to really have a measurable improvement is going to take about 12 weeks. And so connect that with your why. Like, when is your hunt? My hunt's September 15th. Reverse engineer. Like, you need to be seriously training 12 weeks backwards from that trip. And that deadline should give you the fire you need to stay consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we all know, I think, or at least most of us know what we should be doing and to what level. That's easier said than done. So I think oftentimes we do wait, we procrastinate, and then we get into the position where there's a high level of urgency so we can attack our why, which is that September elk hunt or, that mule deer hunt that you have coming up. I think that a lot of that's just human nature. It's hard to do hard things, right?
Yep.
But what for a person who is in that position of, hey, I'm 3 months out, I need to get with it. The reality of that upcoming hunt has fully hit. What are types of things that a person can do or programs that they can access on the Mountain Tough website that are good for that ramp up?
Yeah. So on Mountain Tough, on the Mountain Tough app now, we have put customers into a variety of different paths depending on a few questions. So the first question that everyone should ask is, do I plan on training at home or do I plan on training at a gym? And both are phenomenal options these days. So like training at home has so many benefits, and you can get really, really good functional athlete, hybrid athlete training done at home now without breaking the budget on gear and equipment. So like basement garage gym setups are really, really excellent options for mountain athletes, for hunting athletes. And there's so many other benefits to it as well. Like you don't have to change your schedule. You don't have to burn gas to get to the gym. You can share that gym with your family. Your kids can see you working out. You can, inspire them to have healthy habits. And then there are certainly a lot of people going to the gym as well with full gear that has more options. But we kind of, in Mountain Tough, in our pathways, we answer that question first. Are you going to train at home with minimal gear? If so, we know where to take you. Are you going to train at a robust full gym? If so, we know where to take you. After we answer that question, we decide whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or an elite athlete. And so that way we can start putting the puzzle pieces together in the Mountain Tough app of the correct pathway to take you on. So if you're a beginner on minimal gear, we have action steps for you. If you're a beginner on full gear, we have action steps for you. And that has changed a lot for Mountain Tough. At first, in 2017, 2018, it was a 16-week full gear, mission specific preseason prep training program for the backcountry hunter. What we realized as we've grown and evolved and scaled is so many people have different lifestyles and so many people have different schedules. So you might have a week where you're at home, a week where you're in a hotel, a week where you have no gear. And we wanted options for all of those cases, no matter where you were at. You can train anytime, anywhere to get ready for the backcountry on Mountain Tough now. And it's a lot more of a longevity focused path. So now in Mountain Tough, it's a really nice on-ramp. We're going to on-ramp you safely to focus on your mobility so that there are no injuries. Because the last thing you want to do, no matter what kind of training you do, whether it's with Mountain Tough or someone else, the last thing you really want to happen in that 12-week window that we just talked about, you have all that urgency and you're planning for that hunt of a lifetime and it's coming up. The last thing you want to happen is an injury, some sort of training injury. So handling it safely, with intention, with a plan is really important, because you don't want to get hurt in July for a September hunt and have to start that rebuild.
Yeah, for sure. No, and that, as I've done a couple workouts on the website, not a lot, but moving around and moving through that is one thing that I really identified, was how customizable it was, like where you're at personally, and also like, the different, it's like a choose your own adventure. If you have no equipment, there's stuff for you. Like you said, if you have a full gym, there's stuff for you. So you can really customize it to just the individual, as well as, the different things that they have access to.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the work that's been done with the Mountain Tough team over the last year and a half. Two of the newer products in the app are the Minimal Gear Daily and the Gym Daily. And those programs are as close as you're going to get to have like a backcountry hunting personal trainer in your pocket. And that was kind of our idea with those two products. Was for 6 or 7 years, Mountain Tough had a Mountain Tough class. So in Bozeman, we had like a morning class and a noon class, and mountain athletes would come in and they would do that 5 days a week to get ready for different expeditions. And class had so many really cool components that are hard to deliver digitally. And this is all connected to keeping that discipline, because keeping that discipline with a really good community and knowing that you're with a really good community every day is part of the magic sauce. Like training with friends or training with like a really good CrossFit class mentally is easier to do alone, because the discipline is like, I'm going to go see my buddies versus I'm going to work out in a cold garage by myself. And so in the app, the Minimal Gear Daily is replicating some of that. So it's a brand new workout every 24 hours, and it also expires every 24 hours. So if you start and then you miss one, you don't even know what happens. So you do get that feeling like, oh shoot, like if I don't do it, I'm not going to even know what everyone did today. I wonder what everyone did today. And those products are fully coached. So there's a Mountain Tough coach coaching you live essentially. And there's two other Mountain Tough athletes, usually one male, one female, that you can kind of compete and benchmark off of. So it's kind of like having a mountain athlete hunting specific class for training right in your living room or your garage gym. And those have become our most popular products. And a huge part of that is the freshness. Like they're brand new every day. The training is always evolving. The community is there. You know what other people are getting for their numbers and their reps. So you kind of know where you stand, and they've become highly addictive. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah, I could see why people would gravitate towards that. Like you said, you've got that level of community. It creates that, I guess, sense of urgency in a way where you're like, you don't have the, well, I'll do it later. Like, well, I'll do that work. I know what workout that is. I'm going to do that later. You're like, no, if I don't do it, like, I'm not going to get to do it. And then probably the biggest element for me personally with that would be just the FOMO. Then the FOMO runs deep with me. And so then I'd be like, oh, I missed out. Or like, you have that group. So you're like, yeah, I've let myself down. I've let the group down,
Yeah, the FOMO is a big factor. And there's a big factor too of, community is big. Community is really big in mental fitness. It's really big in longevity of habits. And so once you start in that and you see, like, if someone else is there and you're not there, you kind of feel bad, like, oh, I should have been there for that person. And so tying community into whatever training you do is a huge game changer for sure.
For sure. One thing that's helped me, and again, like I'm almost like in restart mode right now, but I was talking to a buddy of mine and we were talking a little bit about just like identity. He's like, you just need to make it part of your identity. Like you should tell yourself, like, I'm the guy that works out every day. And to me, like, it seems so simple, or almost like, I guess not ridiculous, but that's something that's helped me just even like getting back in it. Like, no, like I don't have an option because I'm the guy that works out every day, and that can be, for me, it's nothing crazy. Like for the last, I don't know, couple months or whatever, it's like, and I've missed a few days, but like 30 minutes, like my goal, my personal goal, right, wrong, or otherwise, I'm like, I'm going to work out and exercise and move my body for 30 minutes a day.
Yeah, that is like the really deep stuff that people should know that does make a substantial difference. And identity work is so closely tied to habits and forming long habits. And so we've talked a lot about this over Mountain Tough blogs and podcasts over the years. And if people can lock onto these concepts, it does make everything else smoother if you can lock it into your identity. And so there was a year where we had everyone in the lab go through a experiment called the tombstone test. You might have heard of the tombstone test, where you essentially have to write your own obituary, and you sit down and you write your own obituary, and you kind of read it out loud to a group of buddies and process it. And it's all connected to the identity you want to have and live, to kind of live the legacy you're looking for, so that when you do get to your real death day, which is going to happen for all of us, that you're living a life that leads to the obituary you want to be read. But it connects really well to that identity work when you do that. So, for example, when we did that in the lab, we had a guy in here who was a All-American wrestler, and he was like an Iowa All-American wrestler. And so on his obituary, when he first started, he wrote that down, which is cool. Like, that was a great accomplishment, but that's not really what he wanted his legacy to be. That was just something he did when he was younger. But after going through that work, he tweaked it. So it was like, after the first draft was, I was an All-American wrestler. The second draft was, I was an All-American wrestler. I learned all those skills so that I could pass down those skills to the next community of warriors and pour my life into that community. Because what had happened was he became a coach. So he went from a wrestler into a career, but he poured his life back into coaching. And that's really what he wanted his legacy to be. But by doing that work, he was able to connect all of that to his identity. And that identity stuff is so powerful. They have statistically proven that, like, in the 70s and 80s, when people wanted to quit smoking, if someone offered them a cigarette and they said, no thanks, they were statistically much higher to smoke again versus if they said, I am not a smoker. So I am not a smoker is their identity. And that is exactly what you were talking about at the start of this question, is your identity being a lifelong athlete, or a lifelong mountain athlete or hunter athlete. That's the same as saying, I'm not a smoker. And it has drastic impacts on your success.
Yeah, for sure. And it seemed, at its core, it's simple, probably more difficult to execute, but it really, it's been a profound thing for me. And we talked a little bit earlier, you were talking about having your, like, what's your ultimate, your goal. And I think for a lot of folks, like, if you're in high school sports or you're in college sports, like, number one, that is a lot of your identity, and you have that North Star, you have that thing that you're working towards. Post college, like, it can be difficult to have that. So being able to build something like that in, like, I think for that person you're talking about, it's like, being a high level wrestler, like, was his identity. But then, like, when that was kind of over in a way, like, he'd still done those things, but it's like, that's still my identity. But he was able to morph it into something and kind of, carry it carry it forward, but just in a different way.
Yeah, it's really, really deep and powerful stuff. I mean, that identity thing going wrong can really devastate a lot of guys' lives. And I think doing kind of that obituary work and thinking about long-term legacy and just knowing that we're all like we're all going to die at some time, and that day is coming for all of us, and making sure that we're doing as much as we can to live our life to its fullest potential until that day happens. But that identity stuff is crazy.
I'm trying to avoid the obituary of loved ice cream and scrolling on Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm getting there, I think.
Oh man.
You know, when you're building out kind of like that, maybe that re-entry into fitness, like what do you think are some good, I guess, goals, for a lack of a better term, as far as like days per week, how much time per day? Like for myself, like I said, I just kind of established, I'm like a half hour a day. Like that's it's in some ways it's just arbitrary, but I also thought it was attainable. And something that I could maintain and then hopefully build off of, to where, who knows, maybe, in 2 years I'll be like, oh, actually I do an hour a day, or, whatever. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that we have found for sure that the length of time, whether it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour, is not as important as the consistency. So consistency is king in fitness, and consistency is king in making it a habit, for sure. So I think, less than 30 minutes, it's hard to get enough done. And so I think 30 minutes to an hour for sure is what you're looking for. And I think what you're really looking for is making that a habit 5 to 6 days a week. So 5 to 6 days a week is going to start building that mental toughness muscle so that it becomes a lifestyle. It is difficult when it's 30 minutes a day for 3 days a week. It's hard to create that as a lifestyle habit because the consistency isn't quite there enough. So I think that on that road to jump starting, that road to getting off that couch, the road to starting a fitness journey, starting with 30 minutes, 5 to 6 days a week, and then kind of ramping it up time wise from there into that 45-minute or hour chunk is a really great path for a lot of people. I'm cautious around talking too much about the time, though, because I do know that there are some phenomenal workouts you can get done in 35 minutes. There are some really phenomenal workouts you can get done in 45 minutes. So that kind of depends on what program you eventually kind of land on. Some of the gym training, like on squat racks and deadlift and squat, take a little bit more time than like a minimal gear training. But really it's finding ways to create consistency in your lifestyle that are going to be the big game changer.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It probably does depend a lot on what you're doing during that time, and I guess, the level of intensity. I could work out at a very low intensity for an hour, and it's like, oh, I got my hour in, but you might have been able to get more done in 20 minutes if you're doing something else at a higher intensity,
Yeah, for sure. And there's all sorts of different, training styles and zones that are going to help you accomplish your goals. And so like having a really solid strength baseline is critical as we get older, and it's critical for heavy pack outs. And it's also critical to reduce the risk of injury. And so a couple days a week should be focused on strength to make sure that your strength baseline is optimal or your strength is increasing. And so if you just, to shed some light on that, if you only walked every day for an hour, that's better than doing nothing, but your strength is still going to decrease, which is going to increase your risk of injury, like on a elk pack out. So kind of taking a look at your week and making sure that you're covering specific. So strength twice a week is a great option. And then cardio a couple days a week is a great option. And then there is a difference between high intensity cardio, which is going to be your VO2 max cardio, and then low intensity cardio is going to be your fat burning, but that's your zone 2, which is going to really increase like the strength of your heart and make you healthy overall. So I think consistency for sure, doing something every day is better than nothing. But as you get more into it, looking at the week to make sure that you're covering some different pillars is really important.
If a person, has the time to do it, or, the mental fortitude, are there advantages to doing like both, like strength training plus endurance in the same day, or should you be doing those things on like alternating those and doing them on different days?
For sure, 2-a-days like is one of the greatest training hacks out there for sure. So it's really interesting because there's a challenge that Andy Frisella did a few years ago, that 75-day hard. That 75-day hard, there has been 20,000 plus individuals that have gone through that challenge, maybe quite a bit more than that now. But one of the great keys to the success of that challenge was how simple it was. It was really, really simple. So it's 2 workouts a day. One has to be outdoors, and there are some other elements as well, but it's it's drinking the water and reading a book and following a diet plan that you choose. He doesn't care which one, but as long as you're following some sort of plan. But the magic around the simplicity of 2 workouts a day is substantial, because if you do a 30-minute cardio session in the morning and then you do 30 minutes of strength in the evening, you're maximizing your time efficiency to a really significant volume that is quite substantial when it comes to the muscular adaptations and the cardio adaptations we talked about earlier. When you look at how those take 12 weeks, a lot of that 12 weeks is related to how many sessions you get in over those 12 weeks. So like if I need you to deadlift 12 to 15 times to see the adaptation I want, then if you're only deadlifting once a week, I know that's going to take 12 to 15. But if you're deadlifting twice a week, now I know I can cut that time in half. And so that's what's happening with those 2-a-days. The 2-a-days are such a game changer too, because you're getting that dopamine rush. So if I train in the morning, you have the dopamine rush, you're going to crush your morning at work. And then if you work out again in the evening, you're going to have that same energy and drive to be there with your family in the evening. And so as long as you're not smoking the same muscle groups twice in the same day, as long as there's some balance there, it's a huge time efficiency savings for sure.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to ask a little bit about, is just like recovery time and kind of what's appropriate. And I can even think of some things like, I guess myself is the best example I have because it's the only example I have, but it's like, I've got an assault bike in my basement. So then like, I'll do that. And then the next day I'm like, depending on what I'm doing, I might do like a HIIT style workout. And I know you guys have like, so many great workouts on the website that cross over into what I just have in my basement and stuff like that. But,
Yeah.
But then I'm like, oh, should I have not done that? Like, cause I'm doing some of the same stuff, when I was on the bike, I was using my legs. The next day, if I do a run, I'm using my legs, but also like for a half hour, maybe that's just like not enough to be like, maybe that level of activity is like low enough in a way that like doing the same muscles 2 days in a row isn't a big deal.
Yeah. I think keeping an eye on that and listening to your body is really important. And so listening to your body for signs of overtraining, and usually that's going to be elevated heart rate. So elevated heart rate when you're just working, and you should not be feeling your heart rate beating in your chest. Irritability, grouchiness, and then difficult time sleeping. So insomnia type symptoms are usually a sign of overtraining where your body needs more recovery. Generally, most people aren't training so hard that they need more recovery. That is what we definitely see that with like elite professional athletes, that they really have to watch that overtraining. But for most of the general public, the thing that you have to watch out for is where you were leading, and that is overtraining certain muscle groups or doing too much of the same thing back to back to back. So from the cardio standpoint, if you push a high intensity workout into zone 5, zone 5 is where they call maximal effort. It's great to do that one day a week, but scientifically you should recover for 72 hours before you do that again. So if you have a nasty, hard, high intensity cardio session where you get close to that max heart rate, that maximal effort, those are phenomenal to do, but just make sure you recover 72 hours before you do it again. And then for your strength work, for like legs, arms, back, and chest, the general rule of thumb is 48 hours, because usually we're not pushing those muscle groups into maximal effort. Like world record squat athletes are pushing that to maximal effort, but like mountain athletes, we're usually in that rate of preserved exertion of like 6 or 7. So we're working our legs and we're working our arms, but we're not maxing them out. So that the general rule there is 48 hours. So like if I squat on Monday, I shouldn't squat on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, but really I should look at like working my legs again on Thursday.
Gotcha. Cool. No, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. You have some diet stuff on the website, yeah?
We do, yeah. Yeah, so we have 2 nutrition programs in the MTNTOUGH app, and they both are excellent. They're both focused on whole food nutrition. And so we try to make it really simple for mountain toughers, and they're both educational programs that educate you how to build your own plan on a predominantly whole foods diet. The newest one is from Kyle Camp. Kyle Camp is an amazing dude. He's a nutritionist and he's a hunter, but he himself throughout his lifetime has a really cool story. So he lost over 120 pounds on his journey. So he was extremely overweight as a kid, and then kind of figured out all this nutrition stuff on his own, like through those college and adult years, to lose over 120 pounds, and is so passionate about helping people, specifically hunters. So, he's a hunter. He lives in Idaho, and his whole business is around backcountry hunting, athlete nutrition in the mountains, as well as training for the mountains. And he built our newest nutrition plan in the MTNTOUGH app, and it's really phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that component is like incredibly important, to complement the, the physical side and the fitness side, and endurance and strength training for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nutrition is huge. It's, you can't out train a bad diet. And, we all know that. And we all know kind of what we shouldn't eat and what we should eat, but really tying that onto your goals is so big, and all of us are so different. So like what you can eat, maybe I can't, maybe your goal is different than my goal. And then we all have these different body types. So some people are trying to pack on size. Some people are trying to lose weight. And so really understanding the fundamentals and your goals and having a solid plan. And then that plan has to be completely different, like training and how you eat when you train throughout the week, throughout the summer. that is completely different than how we want you to eat on the mountain. Because then you get to the mountain and you're going to go. A lot of these backcountry hunters are burning 8,000 calories a day. So like do it yourself backcountry elk hunting in a Western state, it's around 8,000 calories a day for a 200-pound male. Every trip has different elevation gain and loss. So sometimes it's higher than that, which creates these massive calorie deficits, and massive calorie deficits is why a lot of people bonk on the mountain. So understanding nutrition in town and nutrition on the mountain are really important for people.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be in a calorie deficit on the mountain. That just comes pretty naturally. What about, like I mentioned also, like I've got like some shoulder issues, in my advanced age, like some joint type stuff. Any tips there to like, guide a person through like, hey, I want to, get into fitness again. I want to start lifting. I want to start doing some body weight workouts, whatever they end up being, the path they take and what that looks like. How should a person navigate that?
Yeah, so we see, questions related to that a lot, and we always have to start with like once your PT clears you, because we don't want any, certainly we don't want anyone training on an injury they shouldn't be training on, where their doctor or their PT really hasn't cleared them to train yet. I have known from my personal experience that like getting nicks and tears and sprains and kind of beat up over the last 10 years, training really hard and hunting really hard, that there's always something that's going to come up, and there's always these little things that we need to adapt and work around and train through and overcome. And everyone on the Mountain Tough team has kind of seen that, and all of our customers are experiencing different things from sports or injuries. And what I would recommend is what we did with the Mountain Tough community, and that is a much larger focus on mobility and prehab and rehab. And prehab and rehab, so prehabbing so that an injury in your shoulder doesn't come up, and then rehabbing as soon as you're feeling any sort of pain. Those have been big game changers for us as a team, a community, and our customers in the app. And so we've done a lot over the last couple of years to address that, because our big goal is, like, if you're a hunter in your 30s, we want you crushing the mountain in your 40s. If you're a hunter in your 40s, we want you crushing the mountain in your 50s. We want our customers to be successful, thriving in the backcountry for 10, 20, 30 years. And for that to happen, the training focus has to be around longevity. And longevity really comes from mobility, flexibility, and stability. So what I would do to answer your question is start adding a lot of like the mobility work into your daily regimen. And so whether it's that 30 minutes in the morning or the 30 minutes in the evening, making sure that you're incorporating mobility in all of those sessions. And we just ended up baking that into the Mountain Tough workouts. So all Mountain Tough workouts, like those MGDs we talked about earlier, the first 5 minutes are all mobility work. The last 5 minutes are all mobility work. But we've put in all the prehab and rehab content into the app now as well. So our physical therapy team put prehab and rehab in the app for all major joints. So ankles, knees, hips, shoulders, back. So a lot of people will dive into there if they're feeling something, or they'll just make sure that's part of their pre-workout warm up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one I did notice those in there, and I thought that was cool because, if a person is like, obviously, like you said, the prehab great, let's do let's do the work so we don't get that injury. But a person could look in that section on the app and be like, oh, I'm having maybe some lower back stuff, or I've got a shoulder stuff, and target those areas and roll them into their greater plan with some really good advice and some good movements. I thought that was super neat. What about anything on like modifying exercises? To be like, okay, like again, I'll use myself as an example. Like with the shoulder, like I was doing a lot of push-ups, and again, like this might not be good advice. I don't know. You tell me. I'm glad I got you here. So I was doing a lot of push-ups. Then I got that injury. And it's like, like a kid, like that's like, I'm not really working anymore, right?
Yep.
But then I also find like lately I'm like, okay, so I'm doing like maybe like a quarter or a half. Like I'm not doing like that full extension, like all the way down. And I'm able to do that like pretty comfortably. So I'm like, well, at least in my head, like again, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm like, well, that's better than nothing. I'm still exercising that area to a level in a way that I like to do. And I guess my hope is, and I'm not an expert, that like maybe incrementally I'll get back to where I was.
Yeah, that's a complicated question. So I like that you're training through it and around it. That for sure is big, because what you see cause a lot of problems is someone hurts their shoulder, like a tweak, and they quit training altogether. And they'll say like, oh, I hurt my shoulder. That was 6 months ago. I hurt my shoulder. That was 8 months ago. And you're like, well, you can't quit working out because you hurt your shoulder 8, 10, 12 months ago. That is the last place you want to go. And that's really common, but that is going to be a hard mountain to dig out of. So training around injuries is certainly a much better path. So adapting and overcoming, finding what works and what doesn't work for your body is certainly a much more effective path. And it's going to create all these positive snowball moments that we want to happen. And I think that, to add to that, we've seen there's so many individuals that are like, oh, my shoulder hurts, so I haven't worked out in 8 months. But what they should really know is like so many of these prehab and rehab movements that you can find on YouTube or Instagram, they're everywhere now. They actually work, and they'll actually make a lot of your shoulder pain or knee pain or hip pain go away. So the prehab and rehab industry has done so many great things over the last decade. So like if your hip hurts, there's a good chance we can make that pain reduce. Now, back to your question around your shoulder injury and avoiding that pain from going to full range of motion. That's a tricky question, because like if you don't do full range of motion for a long period of time, then your body's going to get used to half reps, half range of motion. And so it's not ideal, but you working out instead of not working out is ideal. With injuries, nicks, pains, it's always good advice to work away from pain. So like if my back hurts when I lean back, but not when I lean forward, avoiding where the pain flares up is a good rule of thumb on injuries. So like that's kind of what you're feeling on your push-up is the bottom. You're getting that pain to flare up. Avoiding that is the way to go. But doing that for too long is not the answer either. The answer, long-term is figuring out what's going on in your shoulder and trying to tackle that from that rehab standpoint.
No, so target the problem.
Yeah.
Like I said,
problem.
my method as of right now, please no, like it really was a genuine question, because it was like, I've got this hypothesis. Let's see, instead of going like what I probably should have done is like, let's go, do some PT. Let's get some actually, some good advice. But I think what you said, I don't know, like it's, I like what you said there, and it made a lot of sense,
Yeah. I think it is interesting. I think it is good. It's really good to know that like if your shoulder hurts, that there's a good chance that you can eliminate that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just a personality type thing in the world where, like, we even see this with our own team members in our own families, where there are individuals that get hurt and they go try to fix it right away. So they'll try everything: PT, dry needle, massage, acupuncture, chiropractic. They'll do whatever it takes to fix it. And there are a lot of athletes that get banged up and just kind of deal with it for a really long time without looking for a solution. And just kind of seeing all that in the lab over the last 8 years, the people that fix it immediately and look for those solutions to fix it immediately have really good success, unless it's some, real weird issue. Because I think the healthcare industry and human performance, like, has come a long ways. And so, like, these rotator cuff and, a lot of bow hunters get banged up shoulders. A lot of those kind of things can be eliminated pretty quickly now from, like, good training and good PT.
No, that's really, really good to know. And also, I think, oftentimes, at least I know my personal strategy, right or wrong, probably wrong. I'm like, I'm not going to the doc immediately. I'm going to, let's ride this out. Let's see what happens. Maybe it'll fix itself a little bit. And then, like, we're talking, 6 months later, 8 months later, like, yeah, that didn't fix itself. So that's good to hear that, like, maybe you guys are seeing a little bit more positive result, like just being like, hey, this happened and I'm going to, jump into how I can try and, fix that.
Yeah. And so, like, sometimes it's so simple. A lot of this prehab rehab work is so simple that when you see it for the first time, you don't think it could actually work. For example, archery hunters and archers that shoot a lot have a ton of shoulder problems. And a lot of their shoulder problem is due to weak traps in lats. So crossover symmetry, like, has been on the market for a while, but you can do similar movements with just bands. But crossover symmetry, you're pulling those bands back over and over again to build a really strong scapula, trap, and lat. And all that is doing is pulling your shoulder down into place. Because, like, if you work at a desk or an office, your shoulders are just slightly rounded forward.
Mm-hmm.
That crossover symmetry is just slightly pulling that back. So that's a pretty good example of, like, how crazy simple it is. Because we see archers all the time, their shoulders hurt. They do crossover symmetry type movements like 3 days a week. It takes like 8 minutes and they feel like 100%. So some of it is really simple.
Interesting. No, that's cool. I like that.
It's really cool.
Yeah, man, I'm trying to think. Is there, what other things, kind of circling back a little bit to that, that 12-week, what I would consider, the panic workout time before your hunt's coming up. Any other tips there that a person can do, or things on the MTNTOUGH app that would kind of, like, target that shorter time frame ramp up period?
Yeah, I know this episode's going to come out in kind of that crunch time season for everyone. It's important for, I think, anyone to know that if you have a big trip coming up this fall, like, you already are late. So start now. Start with that urgency and intention. And whether it's a MTNTOUGH program, your own program, someone else's program, whether it's a CrossFit class or a local boot camp class, a local gym class, I think the important thing is to start. Because the sooner you start, the better. And the sooner you start, the more you're going to thrive on that trip. And I know a lot of these trips are big moments for people. A lot of people have saved for 10 years to go out west, or for 10 years to go to Alaska or British Columbia. And for many people, they're they're trips of a lifetime, and they are going to throw a lot of external factors at you that are going to test your physical fitness. And the higher that we can get that before you go, the better. So even if you're in good shape, you're going to have to deal with some weather disasters, some gear disasters. You're going to have to deal with some elevation. There's going to be some drainages and creek crossings that you didn't expect were going to be as challenging as they actually are. And so anything we can do from now until that trip is critical. And it's interesting because in the hunting community, it's in all communities, but we have a tendency to focus on our gear. And so like we have this trip booked in October in Alaska. We focus on our boots and our socks and what pant are we going to wear and what jacket, what pack. But a lot of times we don't actually go use that gear in the field much before that trip pops up in October. And so training, but then training with your actual gear as much as you can before this trip of a lifetime rolls around is huge. I think like people that are very familiar with their gear, so their rifle and their scope and their optics, their boots, their clothing system, when they get on this hunt, they're focused on the hunting experience. But people that are in the field out of shape, that haven't tested their gear, you often find that in the field, in the moment, they're focused on their gear because they haven't felt like the blister from those boots yet. And that's not what we want to happen. We want you to thrive on these trips, and to thrive on these trips, you got to start early. You got to start now. Not only should you be training physically and mentally, but you got to start using this gear all the time. And I think of your mind and body being the greatest piece of gear that's going to go on this trip.
100%. No, I mean, that is really good advice and something I definitely have been guilty of. It's, it's easy to sit on the couch and scroll and buy the lightweight, high speed pack or shelter or whatever, which is all great actually, because I am pro all those things. I love those things, and they do make your life better, easier, more comfortable, more efficient on the mountain. But like you said, I mean, your mind and body, and that's the hard part, and that's where it takes a lot of work to do that. But I know for myself personally, like that is the limiting factor, of like looking across there and be like, man, can I get across that drainage? Okay, what time is it? Okay, well, if we get one, then what? Can we get back? Like, oh, do we bring our camp with us now because we're going to be over there tonight? Oh, do I really want to carry that? Can I carry that down there? Like, I mean, like those things creep in, and that I think, doubling back to, the mental toughness and probably, you get those little voices in your head that you're like, I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if you can do that, which, probably you should sometimes listen to, right? But also just, working through some of that stuff and realizing that hopefully, you can do more than sometimes you think you can. But I don't think you get that without putting in that real work on the front end.
For sure. Yeah. I think the real work is key. And you see it a lot with, like in Bozeman, there are these legendary hunters, right? And we've been lucky just living here to pal around with some of these guys. And when you're with them, the one thing that struck me is they're focused so much on the hunt because they have really nice gear, but they wore that gear all of shed hunting season and all of spring bear, and then backpacking all summer with their family. And now it's hunting season. And so they're kind of masters of their craft because they are kind of like training how they hunt all the time. Nothing's ever a first time for them. And so then when they think about like, can I get across that drainage? That question doesn't even pop into their mind. Like they're going.
Right.
And their only question is like, am I going to die? They're not even thinking about that. Like if there's an elk.
I'm not sure that they're thinking about that part either, though. I think there's one thing. It's like the dying might be a secondary.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But yeah, I mean, and that is, and I know on the app, I mean, you guys incorporate some things like, some pack training components. Yeah.
We do. Yeah. So a lot of our programming, depending on which path you choose, most of them are going to have a heavy pack day. And so the heavy pack day is really, really critical. We haven't talked about that yet on today's show, but across all these training pillars, one thing that hunters have to focus on are those longer hours under heavy load. And so a lot of the strength training and gym training you're doing is going to get your body's chassis ready for that heavy pack, but you really can't replicate some of those 2, 3, 4 hour walks with a heavy pack on. So many of our programs, like you're going to see that pop up on a Saturday or Sunday where we want you to do a pack periodization progression. So we're going to start you at 50 pounds for 4 miles. Then we're going to go to 60 for 4. But some of those, depending on the program, are going to get up to 10, 12 miles. So you are going to be out there for 4 or 5 hours. But that is a game changer for hunters, like hunters that experience an 80-pound pack for the first time ever in their life on the mountain compared to someone who's trained all summer with it is a huge, huge game changer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a game changer for your mind and your body, but also you're talking about using your gear. The first time to figure out how your pack straps work is not on the mountain. And when you're doing pack training like that, you are putting a heavy load in your pack. However, your pack, whether you have a shelf or you're putting it in the main bag itself, but you're tightening those straps down and just really fine-tuning how that works. And I think, you're talking about those, high-speed hunters that are doing that stuff on a year-round basis and intimately familiar with their gear to where they don't have to focus on it. It's not like, well, how does this work if I put this in there? It's like, oh, this strap does this, and I want to carry the load like this, and if it's this heavy, I'm going to, all that stuff is coming. You get to a point where it's like secondhand. You know what your game plan is, and I think it's going to, number one, it's going to improve, I guess talking about the pack specifically here, but I think it crosses over into other pieces of gear as well. But it's going to improve how fast and efficient you are in, getting your stuff ready, and it's going to improve your experience with that heavy load in this example for sure as well. Because I've packed my pack the wrong way, and like on the mountain, and not knowingly, but I certainly suffered the consequences of it.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. I mean, in addition to that, which is key, everything you just said is so huge. Like the straps, is my weight too high? Is my weight on my pack too low? And then you're also like, if you're going out for a 6 mile heavy pack ruck this summer, you're probably going to wear the same boots that you're hunting in. Mm-hmm. So we're working on some stuff there. And then like the way the straps pull on your traps, you have to kind of get your traps ready for that. There's not a lot of gym exercises that are going to get you even close. The way the pack sits on your hips, like, is it too high? Is it too low? The more we can figure out this summer before the hunt, the better.
100%. No, I think that's probably, we kind of maybe saved the best for last, but or at least a really good one for last. But I think you're right. I think that is just so critically important. And again, you're not going to find those things out until you do it, and you're not going to find it out in 10 minutes either. Like, oh, really? It's on after a few hours. Like I'm getting like a hot spot with my boot or whatever that is, or like, oh, I actually need to adjust my straps on my pack this way because it's going to improve this. And you just all those little tweaks, that's where that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's really cool. We did a show last week with Remy for Remy Warren's show, and he asked me the question, what is the biggest mistake that you see hunters making before going on a hunt of a lifetime training wise? And we've talked about a lot of these mistakes over the years in Mountain Tough. There's definitely the mistake of, for a long time, there was guys that would kind of just ride the elliptical all summer and have no strength training. That was a huge mistake. Then there was kind of a season where guys would kind of bodybuild all summer in the gym, and that, they were strong, but that was a huge mistake. But when he asked me that question last week, based on learning more and seeing more, I think the thing that seems to crush people on the mountain the most is the really, really steep descents going downhill with a heavy pack on. And I think the reason for that is, if you don't live out west, it's pretty rare that you're going to ever go down a really steep hill with a heavy pack on. And even if you do, but then I think another reason that is huge is that a lot of people are training for hunting now, and they're training doing step ups. They're training hiking up mountains. They're doing lunges, deadlifts, squats, but it's fairly rare that you ever are training coming down a really steep descent. And when you do come down, like when you're on an elk pack out and you have to come down a huge drainage, that's where you see a lot of people start to have some real issues, because you have a heavy pack, you have gravity, you're going straight down. So all your deficiencies are going to come out under that moment. And it's slippery, it's uneven, and then the pack's pulling you as well. And so when we were talking last week, the solution is to start applying some of that to your life this summer as well. And we've seen that changed the game for people that don't have a steep hill where they can put a heavy pack on and go down. There are some hacks. So there's a well-known mountain athlete workout where you put a treadmill at 15% incline. So most treadmills max out at 15. Then you put it at 2 miles an hour. You put your heavy pack on, and then you turn around and walk backwards. And it's a really, really cool hack because it feels exactly like you're coming off a steep drainage in elk season. Like the bottom of your quads right above your knee gets super loaded. It gets sore really fast. The same feeling that you feel when you're going to come down. And that's huge because there's this hip, knee, ankle connection that causes all these issues. And the stronger we can get that connection and that alignment before you get into the backcountry, the better. So I would highly recommend that, because that is often overlooked in all training is, okay, what happens when I'm coming down for 4 hours with an 80-pound pack on?
For sure. Yeah, that's a big one. And like you said, it's can be difficult to replicate. And that's definitely a good way to do it, particularly like, maybe it's whatever I can think, we're coming off of our, Wisconsin winter here, which actually I should say it's been a pretty mild one, but and we don't, we're not blessed with the mountains that you guys have, in, where you're at. So that's a good one. And you're right. That is a different movement, putting different stresses on your body, and you might be great at going up, but that's gonna, that can definitely get you. What about, would you say about, is that like anything else, like kind of like, not easier way into it, but like start that with like a 20 or a 40-pound pack, and then, kind of slowly, ramp that up. I would assume you don't want to just like go, yeah, I'm going to hook 80 in my pack because, I'm going to simulate an elk quarter or whatever, 60 to 80 or whatever that is. I mean, is that something you want to be careful about?
Yeah, for sure. You want to be careful with that one. Just like all training, think about it as like a ladder, a progression. And so start adding it like 3 days a week you could start at 40, 50 pounds and then just work your way up from like 2 minutes to 5 to 6 to 10. I think 10 minutes, 3 days a week. That hack, it smokes your legs really fast. So it doesn't take a lot. You don't need to be on there for an hour or two.
Okay.
I think if you did 10 minutes, 3 days a week, and then just worked on that weight increase in your pack, it'll change the game this fall.
I might have to try that one when I get home tonight.
Yeah, it's surprising. It's surprising how fast your quads start burning on that one.
Probably surprising and also a reality check at the same time. You're like, oh man, darn it.
It's a good gut check.
Oh, cool, man. Did we miss anything, Dustin? Probably a lot. It's an infinite topic. I mean, you're talking about, diet, exercise, strategies, oh my gosh, it's like it goes on and on, right?
It goes on and on. It's fun. Human performance never stops evolving. Even if you think about the professional athletes in America, how far they've come in the last 20 years. It's always changing. We're always learning more. There's always new kind of protocols that are popping up that change the game. So it's a lot of fun. I think the last thing I would add is, like, we've talked so much today about people that probably have a big trip coming up this fall. And I don't want to discourage anyone that doesn't have that on their calendar this fall from making these lifestyle changes, because these lifestyle changes are so much bigger than hunting. Like, hunting is not the end game. It's just an event.
Mm-hmm.
These lifestyle changes, what really happen is you start becoming a better father, a better mother, a better husband, a better friend, a better employee, a better boss, because it creates this positive snowball in your life that kind of starts opening up the realm of possibilities of things you can do. And it gives you kind of that energy. You're eating better, you're sleeping better, you're feeling better. And all of those things can change the trajectory of your life in a positive way. So I think if you don't have that big hunt this fall, I would still highly encourage you to make these changes, and you can still have that same urgency impact as a hunt by just putting something big and challenging on your calendar. And so a lot of Mountain Tough athletes will put like a marathon or an Ironman or a Spartan, a High Rocks, something on their calendar to create that same sort of momentum. So I would highly encourage listeners to do that.
Very cool. Nope. That is a great idea, and I think great advice, and I think we'll end on that. So, man, Dustin, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hopefully you are as inspired about exercising as you could be right now. Check out the Mountain Tough Fitness Lab website. I keep saying website. I'm using the website and app interchangeably to some degree here, or maybe to a large degree, but man, tons of great resources, specific to and focused on the mountain hunter. And man, after poking around there, I guarantee I'm going to be spending some more time there, Dustin. So appreciate you coming on and chatting through everything with us.
Yeah, appreciate you getting this message out and everything you guys are doing. It's awesome.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. Thank you again, Dustin. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.